Witcher. We're going to talk about
Mhm.
the Netflix show Witcher. So we'll be covering season 1 in just because we'll be comparing, contrasting, and that kind of thing. So hopefully you haven't seen Witcher season 2 and not season 1. And then the first half of Witcher season 2 and kind of whatever context we can provide for potentially things from books or from games or whatever, we'll do that as well, where it can happen. So spoiler warning for Witcher stuff through season 2 on Netflix, or through first half of season 2.
It's gonna be
Um,
so hard to not talk about the second half. I'm
I'm
just gonna put
so
that out there.
sorry.
It's like I'm driving 100 miles an hour and you're like, hit the brakes.
yeah.
I'm so sorry. If
It's all good.
something spills out, like don't worry about it. I don't like I need some surprises. I can have things spoiled for me, but like I definitely need like one or two that I'm still gonna be like, what?
Okay,
So
why don't we start then with Andrea? You
Mhm.
tell us what was the last thing that happened. So you remind
Yeah.
us where we stopped in the storyline. We'll
Yeah,
kind of go
absolutely.
backwards.
So, I mean, for overall, the last thing that really happens, the last big kind of things that happen for me are, um, Princess Ciri, is with Geralt at Kaer Morhen, and they've just discovered that her blood is special. She's got elder blood, um, because there's like some signs in the woods that where her blood has dropped, like those special flowers have grown, and Geralt's mentor Vesemir and his buddy Triss, um, the mage, have just discovered that like her blood is elder blood and can be a component in whatever concoction makes more witchers. So Vesemir's like really excited about this. And then the other big kind of ending plot line that is, kind of our mid-season finale, maybe we'll call it, is that Yennefer and I think his name is Cahir, the Knight of Nilfgaard, are
Hmm.
just escaping to try and get to Sintra, and they're on a boat that's headed for Sintra. Um, but Yennefer notices um, that their sort of underground railroad kind of conductor, the bard Jaskier, has just gotten his loot smashed, and maybe something has happened to him. So she's sort of like faced with the decision of, am I staying on the boat and saving myself, or am I going out to like figure out what happened to him and maybe like sacrificing my chance to escape and do something good for me?
Okay.
So
All right. I think is that kind of a refresher there, Mike,
Yeah,
where she's left
yeah,
off. Okay.
that's great.
So why don't we talk a little bit then, Mike, what is your background with Witcher, and what were your thoughts on season 1?
So I guess you would call me a Witcher virgin right up until season one. This is another one of those things where, again, my wife reads at ridiculous paces, and so she knocked that series out
Mm.
just ahead of the first season coming out. And then my brother-in-law has played all of the video games religiously as well. I tried Witcher 3 briefly, but not enough to get into the story and really have a passion for it from that perspective. So what I ended up doing is I watched season one. I fell in love with the series. I've read a bunch on the background now and kind of filled
Mm.
myself in to the lore of it. And then obviously talked with Rachel about it pretty significantly about what's happened in the books. So for the most part, in reality, I don't have a big tie
Mm.
to the world of The Witcher. Um, but I loved the first season. I loved Henry Cavill's portrayal. Really liked just the character of Geralt that he put out there. So
Mhm.
Okay. Nice.
and now I know a lot about the
Right.
world,
Yeah.
the large picture of it, right? Because I have done a bunch of background research into it. Now I
Mhm.
kind of feel vested with the
Right.
story.
Yeah. Yep. So Andrea, how about you? What was your, cuz you you and Chris, like you said, recently just binged. It's freshest in your mind, season 1.
Yes.
You just binged through it. So how would you come away with that?
Yeah, I also loved season 1. Um, I thought that the storytelling was excellent. I came into it totally fresh, hadn't even looked anything up. I mean, like you and Alan had sort of like talked to me a little bit about like the Witcher games, but there was not enough context for me to like really understand,
Sex on
you know.
unicorns. That's the
Yeah,
recurring.
you
Yep.
guys told me just like the wildest stuff that I was like, okay. So you really like didn't sort of like set me up to be like, I understand the lore of The Witcher, like and everything that's going on in this world. So I came at it, I think, pretty fresh. Um, which is not something I'm used to doing, but was kind of fun to, be that new audience and have things just like revealed to me, had to put the pieces together for myself. I haven't really done that in a long time because usually I'm reading the books or I've read some, background information, I've played a game or whatever. So I thought season 1 did really well for introducing people to the world of The Witcher, giving us the reveals, giving us the, here's the present, here's the past, here's some, storylines to come, and weaving them all together um, in a really interesting and compelling fashion. There were maybe, I had small quibbles about sometimes I think they returned to scenes a little bit too often, and I was sort of watching the same thing happen maybe like once too many times. In the fall of Sintra is kind of what I'm thinking of, and like all of the things that were happening there. I feel like I was returning to the same moments like maybe one too many times. But I think those are very small quibbles with the first season.
Okay. Yeah, my background coming into it was I've played through Witcher 2 and Witcher 3, and then quite a lot of Gwent. And
Yes.
so I was pretty cemented in really, like, there's a lot of fantasy universes, and this was probably the one I connect with the most.
Hmm.
Because I love the political element of it. How
Hmm.
the always it's still very confusing to me. I don't have a grasp on it, but I always love it. Uh, the way that the different kingdoms are working against each other, and the power players, seeing them conduct
Yeah.
their schemes. So I love that a lot. I think in general I was pretty happy with season 1. I think that they did a lot really well. I watched it right when it came out, so it's not particularly fresh in my mind.
Hmm.
But I remember having a couple complaints. One in particular was Triss. You couldn't
Mm.
Triss. You couldn't pick her out of a lineup. You'd be like, which in this lineup, who is Triss? I wouldn't pick her. I don't know. Now I understand that the show is based on the books and not the games,
Hmm.
but they're clearly taking things from the games because they're so well
Absolutely.
liked, that Geralt looks like from the game. That's clearly
Yeah.
what they modeled off. So I think it's fair to compare in that way. And then also a lot of people complained about the Nilfgaardian armor. It was kind of just wrinkly black stuff or whatever.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah,
and I will
I thought it was made
say,
out of bark at first.
oh, okay, interesting.
Yeah, it was very
Um,
strange.
so I will say, I think that I think the showrunners were listening to feedback because they had some corrections in season 2.
Hmm.
So, but overall, yeah, I thought season 1 was pretty great, pretty well paced. It really made me care for Yennefer when I
Hmm.
hadn't previously.
Hmm.
Gave her a lot of context, filled in a lot of blanks for me. And though I was pretty unsure of the actress to begin with, she sold me eventually. Um,
Hmm.
she had the performance. So,
Yennefer is actually my biggest disappointment with season 2. To be
okay.
Oh, okay. I thought
perfectly
I thought you were
honest,
gonna say in season 1, and I was like,
no,
I was
I
on like the whole
love.
journey with her in season
Yeah,
1.
me too. And she seemed complex. And you thought that this was a person who was obsessed with power, but it wasn't actually power that she was obsessed with. That's just what she thought. she was obsessed with, but she was really obsessed with having her own autonomy, right?
Mhm.
That is the real power to her. And you see that go through as she believes that having all of this power is going to solve her problems because she was so beaten and so mistreated and so discarded, right? That she thought, well, I need power to be respected. And then
Mhm.
once she got the power, and that doesn't solve anything, it's the autonomy, it's her free will, her choice over her life that she really wants. That is so well fleshed out in
Mhm.
season one. And I don't think I'm spoiling anything with season two, but I feel like they just went, nah, she just wants power again. No, like that's not it at all.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, again, I've only seen through the first half of the season, but I agree that her character development, I think, took several steps backwards. Um, because again, this season, it feels like she's focused on what she can't have. In the first season, the first half of the season, it was power. She was gonna, go be a mage, and she was gonna be respected, and she was gonna be so powerful. Then she was gonna be beautiful, and then she was gonna get this position at court and be important, and influence politics and shape the world. And then it was, oh, I need a baby. I need choices over my own body because that was taken away from
Right.
me. So I'm like desperate to heal. Now, again, in season two, she's lost her power and is desperate now to go like heal that part of herself and like find herself there. And I feel like I've already seen this storyline for her where she desperately wants something that feels impossible and isn't going to really help her, but she's so blinded about this like this is what I need that she's just not expanding into any other arenas as a character. And it's really frustrating.
It's very well said.
Thank you.
Um, yeah, other things in season one, I guess. I thought they came up with pretty good effects. The song
Mhm.
by Dandelion that they created for him was
Dandelion.
very good. It's very addictive, very addicting.
Yes.
Toss a Coin to Your Witcher is a classic now.
Yes.
Anytime we're going to a Renaissance fair, that one definitely is going to be on to somewhere in there. So
Yep.
And I do have to say, as long as we're kind of on looks for a character, I did check out some various, images of him like in the game. I'm glad they like toned it down. He's still like flamboyant and fun and like, especially in season 2, we're seeing a little bit more play on color and flash in his dress, but I think this is a moment where like it's good that they just like took it down like one notch and
yeah,
made him a little more real.
I don't think anyone really complained about Dandelion. I think that I think they did a good job with
I think they
what
did
we
too.
yeah. Yeah.
I wonder.
Yeah,
Oh,
go
go
ahead.
ahead. Well, I was just going to say on that side of like character casting, right?
Mm,
Obviously, hugely important aspect of any show. Iron Man is Downey Jr.
Yep.
With his Thor, et cetera, et cetera. And frankly, Cavill is Geralt.
mhm,
But as somebody who wasn't familiar, didn't have a visual representation from the games, and didn't have the description from the books, I will say it is nice to have that freedom to not be held back by the
mhm,
way that the character looks. Like I can just fall into their
Yeah.
portrayal.
mhm,
Um, and that is definitely, I mean, as a showrunner, that would be hard to do. Like hard to balance. Do I
mhm,
cast based off of the way they look, yeah, or based off of the performance that I think they can provide? And you're going to alienate at least one group if you don't do it right.
Yep. I mean, that's the burden that a showrunner takes on when you're going to adapt content. When you're taking
mhm,
something that has a built-in fan base, that is your responsibility. That's like what you're stuck with. And yeah, it's going to be a tough call, and it's something I've been fighting with now a lot because a lot of these adaptations, it's like, man, do I want to read Wheel of Time, or do I just want to be okay with what I have in the show? Do I want to read Dune, or do I just want to be okay with what's in the movie? Do I want, it's like you choose your medium that you
mhm,
want to consume whatever property in. and then just let it be. It's like the Cowboy Bebop Netflix thing. My Cowboy Bebop is the animated one, and anyone that likes that is not gonna like the live action one.
Well,
there's just no way. There's no way.
you're,
But
you're
if you
100%
haven't
right.
but if you haven't seen the original or you saw it and you didn't like it, maybe you like the live action one. So like
Mhm.
I don't know. To
They
me,
canceled it,
those yes. Which
so
I should have put that in a news thing. As an aside, quickly, the show's doing pretty well. Shockingly, Cowboy Bebop on Netflix, it's charting.
really?
Like people are watching it, as far as I'm aware.
Shocked.
So I don't know who you are out there, but quit it. All right, stop watching that garbage.
Or I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'd be willing to like have you leave a comment and be like, "What is it?" Like, even as someone who is like willing to give it a shot. Um, I definitely was like shocked at the amount. John's out.
We lost them.
I'm
John,
sorry.
we lost you.
Like
That's so
Were
mad.
you were so passionate about Cowboy Bebop that you were like, I can't, pause button.
no,
Andrea, don't even invite this commentary. Like, shut it down. I'm serious though. I would love to know who is the audience for this Cowboy Bebop. Is it people who haven't seen the anime? Is it shockingly somehow people who have and are finding something redemptive about it? You know what I mean? I'm literally curious. You don't have to see any of the comments, John. I can take it all on, but I'm
Yeah, you can find them. I'll dox them. We'll like get rid of these people. No,
I'm
whatever.
luring you
It
out in
just
the open so John can dox you.
it's definitely a thing. It's definitely a thing where it's like, what do it's going to change your enjoyment. That's why it's nice to have people on the show or to talk about people that have different backgrounds with content, because it definitely affects how you see it.
Yeah.
So
bringing it back to Witcher, I did not look up anybody from the games until I was solidly into season 2 and was just sort of curious about.
sure.
I saw a couple of your pictures, when you were
Yes.
recapping, and was just curious to then go look at like direct comparisons between the actors and their game counterparts. And for the most part, I was pretty pleased at what I saw.
Sure.
I think there was some earnest attempts to keep to images. I mean, Vesemir in particular just looks like you just, depixelated him and made him a real person. It's astonishing to me like how much this actor looks like, Vesemir of the games. So
Yeah.
I'm looking at the images of Triss too, and I mean, her facial structure seems pretty similar. The shape of her nose and the shape of her mouth. When looking at the two pictures together, I mean, if they change the color of her hair and don't have it be curly, then you're a lot closer. Which they kind of did a little bit with second season.
So yes, so let's get into season 2
Yeah.
with that. Well, because I wrote that in my comments somewhere. What episode was that we really kind of
4.
got?
3 and 4 is when she comes to Kaer Morhen.
Okay. For yes. So my comment was Triss. Look, let's see. Triss's look and hair is a lot better. Was that so effing hard? Because I don't know. Like the actress, right? As soon as they made her hair a little more red, they did a style that was a little more similar. They put her in some clothes that I could see Triss wearing, and I'm like, why didn't you do that from the beginning? Instead, you had to use an excuse of like it's like she reinvented herself. It's like she got injured and now I'm gonna like have a makeover. And it just was weird. Again, it's response to fan criticism, I'm sure. So that's good that they're listening in that way or whatever. It was a very Triss is a fan favorite. It's Yen versus Triss, all right? So you don't get to mess up Triss, and I think that they pulled her back. We're getting to see her a little more in this show, do a little more in this season, all that stuff. So I think that's been a market improvement.
Yeah,
So.
as someone who hadn't, known of her origins and known if she was going to be like a big character or not. When she's first introduced in season 1, there's just, there's no context, so it's like she looks how she
Yeah.
looks.
Yep.
You think she's going to be just one of these like one-off, like this is, one of the side stories that's happening, and it's just within the contained episode. And then having her come back like right at the season finale and then into season 2, it was like, oh, so this is like a recurring character. She's changed, like this is what she should have been. So from that standpoint, it was a little odd. For you, I'm sure it was like, this is so much more satisfying. And for me, it was
hmm
like, cool, I guess she's gonna have a different look now.
She was
That
on
part threw me off too.
Yeah.
like she's on like the Hoda Copy show or something, and she won the prize to get the makeover. So it's
She
just
got the makeover, yeah.
yeah. Yeah, no, I it's one of those things where I guess I'm trying to be reasonable about it, but when you see in season 1 when you see her, I just have no idea who this character is until they say their name. And so it's like,
Mhm,
"Oh, that's Triss? Okay. I shouldn't have to do that. I should
mhm.
be like, "Oh, that looks like this person. That's probably this person." And then it's close enough that
Well,
but
Well, yeah. I mean, I think there's something to be said, when you do have recasting sometimes like people have a totally different vision, or they say like, this you're just like won me over. It's like the personality and not so much the look. Sure. But with Triss, it's just so simple.
yeah,
Like you could have just
right.
given her red hair and a different dress and it would have been like, there's Triss.
Yep.
Like it's just something so easily fixable that it just feels like you should have just done this from the beginning.
Yep. Yep. So I having watched season 1 quite a while ago, and the fantasy series I watched recently being Wheel of Time, when I first started this, my initial comparisons were to Wheel of Time.
Oh yeah,
And
okay.
I just like immediately I'm like, yes, this is someone behind the camera. This that like has an eye for it or something. I
Mhm.
felt the budget, the monsters felt real. I even wrote
Mhm.
somewhere in there, like, do you see that magic? How it felt like it had impact, it had weight when he's being pinned against the wall in the first
Mhm.
one or whatever by that scream. Like you feel those things. And
Mhm.
those are a lot of complaints I had with Wheel of Time. And I so
Mhm.
immediately season 2 of Witcher felt very refreshing to me. Um, in the like adult content element of it and the elevated production value.
Mhm.
I don't know if you
Yeah.
felt that way or like if it's how did the show end up looking for you compared to season 1 even? Did you notice a difference in Witcher season 1 versus 2? Was there an improvement there or?
I
Yeah,
think
Mike.
go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, Mike, do you want to go ahead? I
Oh,
feel like I've been
yeah.
chatting quite a bit.
um, I feel like it did a good job of maintaining the visceral combat, maybe even turning it up a little bit of a notch. But like the Leshy, right, seemed more grounded. Um, and they didn't have to rely so much on darkness in
Mhm.
this
Mm,
second season as they did in the first. And a lot of times I feel like when you're doing CG, one of those quick tricks, which seems like kind of save money, is to put it in a lot of cover of darkness. The zombie scene, heck, the opening scene from season 1, where we see him fighting that spider monster type thing in the water, but it's really, really dark. And so you can kind of hide detail that way. They didn't have to do that with this. I mean, their Leshy was up front and center when I'm trying to calculate episodes. Yep, when Esco um, becomes Leshy, right? That is front and center in a well lit room, and then there are things that happen later in the season that we won't talk about that highlights how good their graphics have gotten and how much they feel weighted. Like you said,
Mhm.
yeah.
when he hits the wall, that could be a little camera shake or whatnot. But there are when they're seeing the creatures, they feel like they're grounded in the reality. Um,
Mhm.
and when he's cutting through the branches, like it
Yes.
actually feels like he's doing it. So
Yep.
yeah, I do agree. I like the fireball. I don't remember the magic
Igni?
word.
Igni, I
Igni.
think. Mhm.
Yep. When
Mhm.
he does that, and that's fantastic. So
Yep.
Yeah, building off of that, from what I've seen so far, like you said, I loved the Leshy. Just the creation of that really real, grounded creature, but then also the creature that ended up destroying the Leshy, not Eskel, but the
mhm,
Leshy itself, that like
mhm.
centipede looking
Hmm.
Yeah,
horned something that they're
yeah,
like, I don't even know. That was awesome.
it was.
It really felt like they took the time to like build a full, complete, creature that had weight, that moved in like a real sense. Like, when it's chasing Siri and it's like climbing around like a centipede would, it just felt like somebody super dedicated to their craft sat around and watched a centipede and how it moved, how like the weight of its legs would go, and then made it giant and put it on the screen.
Right.
So I loved like both the creature effects, like those kinds of things, but then also like the magical effects. Some of my favorite things were early on in the season, like the mind magic that Tisea was doing, where she just like delves into
Mm.
somebody's head and then gets to like watch through. Some of that was just like so visceral. It just felt like I was also in that body watching these like scenes play out and moving my own limbs, in this battle of Sodden that was, being replayed. So stuff like that was just like both ends of the spectrum. Somebody was, giving it 100% at work.
Yeah.
Yep. I also like in the first episode how so like you say, they don't shy away from the monsters, but we also use it to, uh, like showcase a lesson. We're
Hmm.
learning about monsters. We get some depth there. They're not all just like purely evil.
Yep.
Siri obviously has empathy, and we learn like how that works out. It's like, well, yes, that's true, and it's kind of sad, but she also slaughtered a village full of people.
Hmm.
So it's and getting to know the guy that's taking them in, but then finds out, well, he was a rapist. So it's like
Yeah.
it is a real gray, um, delicate adult situation, that I think is good added experience for Siri. And then they, made it emotional right away. So we
Hmm.
use monsters to progress the story, to develop character, and to make something emotional. So I thought
It
it was a
also
well done episode.
it calls back to season one when Geralt was talking to um, Stegobor. Is that how I
Hmm.
pronounce the name? When he's talking about lesser evil, greater evil, they're variations of evil, but if I have to choose, I'm just not going to choose at all. Right?
Hmm.
He sees things. He says he sees things in more of a black and white nature when it comes to the monster hunting thing. And so then you've got Sirius sitting there questioning the way that he sees things, right? So you're seeing a little bit of Geralt development as well, or understanding,
Hmm.
because kind of does take a back seat to Ciri and to Yennefer, respectively, in the seasons,
Hmm.
or flip that around.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, but you know, he says he sees things that way and that they are lesser evil or greater evil is still evil. And then here, Siri is questioning that, and then boom, yep, I'm a rapist. See, it's like,
Hmm.
see,
Yep.
it
Yeah.
is being a rapist greater evil or lesser evil? Does it really matter? No, because at the end of the day, it's still bad.
Right. Right.
But yeah, there is that question of like how much gray area, are you willing to forgive until you get to that point where you're like, okay, I'm out. Like I gave you so many chances, like Siri does. She gives him so many chances, and Geralt kind of gives him some chances. And they're maybe willing to be like, I know you were so in love, like, ugh, you like willingly overlooked these slaughters, but it's complicated when it comes to matters of the heart. And then suddenly it was like, yep, I'm a rapist too. Okay. Like,
Mhm.
there's only so many times that we can, give you that gray area until it becomes, you know, we have to
Yeah.
do something.
Yeah, and it's fun because a lot of times the characters that say, I'm really not a good person, they want to draw people in that way. Oh, they're kind of self-hating or whatever.
Mhm.
But they actually are gonna turn around and be heroic or something like that. And it's like, no, it's not that. I really am. You really shouldn't like me. But then it's the complexity of, well, he does feel remorse.
Mm-hmm.
There is remorse there. So again, it's
Yeah.
not a pure evil, good and bad kind of thing. So I just thought it
Well,
was good.
it's fun because I think Geralt gives off those vibes too of like, I'm like such a hard person and I don't have like, soft fuzzy feelings and like don't like me and but
Yep.
then that draws people in like,
Yeah.
in our first season that role is really filled by Jaskier, Dandelion, kind of like inserting himself and he's sort of like a little brother type, or some variation on that kind of relationship with Geralt. And then this season it's Ciri who's kind of, like worming her way in and kind of thawing the ice, so to speak. Um, and even though he's putting off those, like I want to protect you, but don't get too close. She's still like, nah, it's all right. I'm still drawn in anyway.
Hmm.
That's human nature too. I mean, the more someone plays aloof, right, the more you want to like you want to be a part of
Absolutely.
that world then because
Mm-hmm.
it, if you don't want to accept me, I want to know what that is and I want to change it or
Right.
I want to break through. There's just something
Right.
natural about us wanting to do that.
Right. I want to be in the inner circle. Like, if you're making it so hard, it must be worth it to like
Right.
really, fight my way in and be part of this like cherished inner circle that you would have.
Um, episode 2.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so this one we start, if I'm remembering right, we start getting into the kind of three ladies sort of come together. These three sorceresses. We're getting
Yes.
now Yennefer and Fringilla being captives, and kind of coming to, in Francesca's view, maybe part of a greater, um, like I don't know, role in history or something faithful.
Design. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
some sort of intelligent design about to happen here, that they all come together, and this is where we kind of everybody gets into trouble because
Mm-hmm.
they all want something different. And I'll have to say to start, Fringilla. Generally, I like her performance. She's definitely one of the ones that also looks very different than from the game, but
Mm-hmm.
I give it more passes because she's. I don't think Fringilla is anyone's fan favorite. I have to say, but otherwise, I think she's an interesting character. And what do you guys think about this going into this kind of crazy vision they had? Right? Was that in this episode?
Yeah, yeah, we meet the
And
elves and
hmm
they, they're keeping our two mages captive um for some, reason. They're supposed to be maybe useful and then they kind of maybe end up actually being useful um with this whole like dreams that they're all having of these hooded figures.
hmm
Um yeah, I do have to say, I think this is very interesting in this episode, particularly that these three women are having um, visions of a hooded figure that kind of represents what they call the Deathless Mother, which is also a three figured woman. Um, and I think this is appearing a lot in TV shows right now, this sort of like um, mother, maiden, crone, like um three women, three-sided woman um model after like Hecate, goddess of the moon,
Right.
who is like the three-figured goddess. I feel like it's just sort of like everywhere right now and I'm really kind of
Interesting.
into it.
Okay.
I've watched several shows recently. I watched The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, which was all about Hecate. A Discovery of Witches also had this mythology in it and pretty front and center. And now, like, to have this kind of same figure who is appearing to each of the women as different, like, kind of evolutions of a woman. I just sort of felt like this is like some really cool through line mythology right now that I'm just digging.
Didn't they do a sequel to Hocus Pocus?
They did. I don't know
Or
that like
are
it
three
actually
more
got released.
witches?
There, I don't think it actually got released. I think it's supposed to be this year that
Okay.
that
Okay. All
the
right. Well,
sequel is being
there's
released.
three more witches.
But
So
yeah.
yeah.
I'm just saying, like this sort of thing is
Yeah.
like everywhere right now, and I'm just like digging that it's in Witcher also.
Cool. Nice. Yeah, Mike, what do you think of these characters? What do you think of Francesca and the elves and the plight of the elves and how that it's all going for him?
I'll be honest. At this point, I don't know why I care.
Okay.
Because we haven't gotten enough of them yet up to this point. Like in season one, they were kind of this. They were still more of a story and a myth almost. You know, we had like one interaction with the former king of the elves, and I think that they're getting to why it's going to be very important without going too much into later parts of the season. They're definitely a vastly important part of the story, but they're this sect, I guess, of elves that we're being shown are not the ones that are vastly important to the history of The Witcher.
Mm.
They are portion. They're part of it. They're descendants of it, and so to me, I just I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm
Okay.
not buying into the
Yeah.
characters yet. There's not a lot of weight on them for me. I'm more interested and invested in some of the others.
Okay.
Yeah, it's an abrupt intro for sure. You know, like you said in season 1, there's mentions of the elves and there's mentions of like the prejudice that people have against the elves, and obviously we see that immediately in season 2 with like Stregobor being like elves are untrustworthy. They're aligning themselves with, it's this whole like huge deal. It's like a through line obviously in what I've seen of the second season so far, this like prejudice. But yeah, they just this particular group appears out of nowhere and suddenly are very integral to the storyline, and it's like, but I don't know you.
Mhm.
Yeah, and it's kind of a bummer because I mean they spend a lot of time showing how Nilfgaardians are treating elves so poorly, and like I get that, and maybe you're trying to get me on the sympathy train, which I can definitely get to. But tell me more about outside of just seeing the atrocities of cutting their ears off and things like that. Like outside of just seeing that, tell me why I need to care about them and not just feel sympathy towards them.
Mm-hmm.
I want to
Yeah,
see a
what
little
else
bit
is
more.
there?
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I think it's interesting how, I mean, the thing you learn in Witcher is you can trust basically nobody. So it's definitely not an elvish thing.
Mhm.
But yeah, I was just ultimately happy with the casting for Francesca. And it's very interesting how they're trying to be a part of this in there, how they're trying to, how Fringilla's desperately trying to regain face, recover. Like, what do? I got to come back to the emperor somehow here. What am I going to bring? Well, if I bring reinforcements, that's something for sure. So I thought
Yeah.
that's an interesting way for her to come out of this.
Mhm.
And then Yen kind of being just stuck there in the middle, kind of going along with it. So but we can
We
move a little
do
bit. Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, before we move on from episode 2, I do have to say, like, this episode dropped like 2 pretty huge bombs that I didn't feel there was a lot of lead up for. Like,
Oh
one,
yeah, I wasn't going
Francesca's
to move on from
pregnant.
this. That
Oh, okay.
because I got problems.
Okay,
Okay.
well, sticking on the elves, Francesca's
Okay.
pregnant. Like, what?
Yeah.
And they don't explain how at
No.
all. Is this immaculate? Like,
That really bothered me. Not the fact that she's pregnant or even that it was going to be like a reveal that she was pregnant, but there was just like she's pregnant and then like total back away from the subject.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of
Okay.
asking asking your, three-headed figure, asking your hooded figure that's promising you something. It's like, what do you want? This is what I want. I want this for the elves. I want this for me. And you get it. And
Yeah. I
but something like that is always going to cost, that's so it's always that's the way
Well,
magic
I
works
just
and
I
stuff.
just feel like her interaction was so vague. Like she just was more like, I want a future for the elves and I want a home and I want us to prosper and I want, there was just so many
Sure.
things.
It
If she would
Why
have
did it
said like,
manifest that way?
Yeah, yeah. If she would have said like, I would like to birth a true blood elf, and like
Mhm.
this is good, you know what I mean? I needed it to be a little bit more because there
More
wasn't enough
specific.
like, yeah. She didn't, I mean, obviously she didn't need to say that because, who likes a TV show that, just like lays everything out for you. But there needed to be a little bit more indication of, you know, this is how I want to manifest what I want for the elves, my people.
And
Okay.
I guess the other part that you kind of have to just be okay with that they haven't really explained with is why has there not been a pure blood elf born in
Yep.
so long? Because if she can birth a pure blood elf, right? Is she pure blood herself? Are you telling me she's
Right.
the only one? Because then Francesca seems even more important than what they had described. But it seems that there's other, not necessarily elder blood, but pure blood elves. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why it's been so long since one's been born. Like,
Mm-hmm.
have they gone sterile for some reason? I just don't know. So
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely something you're just supposed to take at this point and question, and yeah, maybe they need some answers for that.
Mm-hmm.
Um okay, I'm going to rant for a little bit here before we move to the next episode.
Are we going to Kaer
We're
for this
going to
rant?
Kaer. We're going to
Okay.
Kaer. We're
Just
talking
want to
about
make
the
sure I'm like,
Witchers. Yeah.
into what I think you're gonna rant about.
So they showed us a bunch of Witchers, and
Mm-hmm.
firstly, I'm like, okay, that's interesting. I didn't know there were that many Witchers presently.
Yeah.
That was a thing that um, there are other Witchers schools, and there's other Witchers in the world.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as Kaer, I don't. Yeah, I was surprised at how many there were there. We are introduced to some important ones. Eskel in particular, and I thought, all right, I can see it. All right,
Mm-hmm.
and then Lambert. Lambert looks nothing like what he's supposed to. And then, as you mentioned earlier, Vesemir is pretty spot on. That's great. That's well done.
Mm-hmm.
My complaint is, I mean, spoilers. Eskel dying.
Okay. I'm just gonna say I'm so glad your complaint is with Eskel because I actually love the guy who plays Lambert. Like
Okay,
I know he
see,
looks
this is
nothing. I know he looks
yes.
nothing like it, but like I'm just sort of okay with like them just like taking like a total break and this guy's personality, like I'm into it.
Just
Like I
slick
feel
his
like he
hair back and
embodies.
dye it dark.
I
That's
mean,
all
okay,
I'm
maybe.
asking. Again, this is not rocket science. Like,
So
why do you purposely have to deviate? Now, maybe this character specifically in the books is like, he's kind of, strawberry haired, frizzy haired guy. All right. Okay. He's got big hair. Okay. I don't know that. That could be the case.
sure.
Again, I'm talking because clearly they've taken a lot of influence from the games for
Hmm.
important characters, for fan favorites and whatever, they've taken stuff from the games. But
Yeah.
yes,
I
ultimately
just
the
feel like his
personality is there. I think
personality is
it's
like
yeah.
spot on. He
Yep.
he sort of, and I don't know if they were going for this at all and if this was like a thought in their minds. He sort of reminds me of Game of Thrones Tormund Giantsbane
Yeah.
with like the strawberry blonde, you know what I mean?
yeah.
Like
Oh
so
yeah.
that so if like that's what's going on, like I'm actually here for that. Like I kind of love it. I love the way he looks. I love the way his personality is, and he's just like a fun guy. I
I
also
mean, he's
I
supposed to be
don't
kind of
know
an
about
asshole, but yeah.
I don't well, he is kind of an asshole. I mean, he's
Yeah.
not like, super nice to Siri or
No.
like, like, "Oh, it's okay. Like, let me help you through your training." He's kind of like, "Let me watch you get beaten up." Like,
Yeah.
yeah, this is a good, I could sit down with some meat and whatever our
Yeah.
version of popcorn is and just like watch this all day. Um, so yeah, so I quite like him, but I don't know what his importance is, obviously, storyline wise, if that's like, you know,
Sure.
gonna be an issue later on down the road.
Yep.
But
Well,
yeah, to get
yeah.
to Eskel, your
Eskel,
problems.
okay. So they killed him. I mean, Eskel is of all, yeah,
What?
of all the
John?
Witchers
Spoilers?
involved, there's a few mainstays that are kind of important. They play a role in series upbringing, and Eskel is one of them. And so it was very odd, and I was very shocked, and I
Mhm.
definitely had a fit of rage when I saw it. I was like, no way you're doing this. No way you're doing this. You have a room full of Witchers and you take Eskel and kill him? What do you do? What is happening here? And so I looked like, okay, did this happen in the books? Is this a thing that happens in the books and they just change? No, it is not a thing that happens in the books. They purposely did this. The showrunner talked about it, and I don't buy the excuses. She wants to say that there's they wanted more, they wanted a death, someone meaningful for greater impact, and for that to be a reason that Geralt needs to push to train Ciri. And I'm calling BS on that, because firstly, from the first episode alone, you have enough reason to need you to be able to defend yourself. She got in a lot of trouble there. She's in major danger. You're around all kinds of major danger. Okay. She's
I was just about to do that. Thank you.
But you need to know other motivation for this character to need to be able to defend herself. Especially when you're going to see how willing she is, because has a figure now that Mousak is gone to look up to. This like father figure that she, begins to really respect and wants to be like. So I just don't buy it, and I don't understand why they did this. It's a good character they could have had around. In this way, then our only look at Eskel is not an accurate, reasonable portrayal of Eskel, because Eskel's a nice guy. Like he's a nice dude, and here he had attitude, because I was like, okay, well, he's injured and clearly this is affecting him, and he's like messed up, and okay, all this stuff, and they're gonna fix it, they're gonna deal with it, and instead we never get to see it. And
I had read an article, and I think it was the showrunner commenting on it, and I wish I had saved the article before I realized that we were going to be talking about it too much, but that character was written. These events were written into the show not as Eskel. They were just written in as a Witcher does this, and then they literally just put the name on the character in the events that they had written in, and then you can speculate as to why you would just throw a beloved name onto a character. So this was not written as Eskel, which is why he seems so off, right? Which is and why they were willing to toss it out. But like, I guess the showrunner just decided, yep, we're going to use this character name that people know. And to me, the only explanation you can do that for then is shock value. But then you question, okay, so what for? Because me, as a person who hasn't played the games, I don't know Eskel from any other Witcher, so I don't care. So it doesn't carry any weight for me. So literally all you've done is tick off the people who do care.
Yep. I 100% agree with your statement. Like, as someone coming in brand new, I was just introduced to Eskel, so I don't really have any attachment to him other than like, ooh, he's a named character, like maybe he's going to be important, but I don't have any of that actual build up to care about him. And you've just now taken him away. And I don't think that there's much emotional impact in that. I don't think there's enough of us seeing that relationship between him and Geralt for us to understand that like his death is the impetus for him to start training Ciri. I did write it down in my notes. Like, obviously I can see that he is affected, and now he's like going to do this with her because of this death. But as an audience member, like, I don't actually have emotional investment in that. I can logically see the train of thought, but I'm not there with it emotionally. So I could have, it really could have been any other Witcher at this point. It really just could have been some rando that came home. I still have no attachment to. At this point, you don't even need to give him a name if you don't want to.
Hey.
And it would have had about the same impact for me, the viewer. And it would have had the same impact, I think, for maybe not Geralt. But you could have like stretched that and just said like, he saw a fellow Witcher go down.
They're all brothers.
And yeah, exactly. And wanted to then train Ciri to defend herself. But I think it would have had the same impact for Vesemir, because his whole thing this season, even though we're just getting introduced to him, I can already tell that like his thing is he's a father figure to all these witchers. He wants to make more. He's lost so many. He feels like those losses, the numbers are dwindling, like, you know, and that's his pain. And he sort of like wants to replace them, not directly, but like indirectly by making more of this brotherhood.
Yep.
So you could have lost any Witcher, and that would have had the same impact for every character.
Yeah, you guys bring up good points of that. Cause I didn't think of that. Having known this character for so long, it's like, yeah, of course. If you didn't know, like, which one would it matter? Pick a
Yeah,
nameless one.
it doesn't. It
Yeah.
doesn't. Truly. The way the show dealt with it. Now, this would have been later in the season. We would have like seen Eskel. Maybe he like struggled with this wound that the Leshy gave him, and like, things are happening with his character. Later on down the road, absolutely, this scene would have been like, like gut-wrenching perhaps as we see his relationship build up. But he's there and he's gone.
Well, and then why? Because I thought, okay, this is how he's going to get extra scarred. The character Eskel is supposed to be,
Yeah.
Yeah.
very messed
Mhm.
up spaces. So they're going to have to get this out of him, and he's gonna
Right.
feel the physical consequence from it. So
Right.
I was on board until there, and especially then they killed him, and it was for nothing because he didn't actually kill the source. The
Right.
thing that he was attacked him that then infected him was still alive. So he really, was like meaningless.
Well, it wasn't completely meaningless because he brought back the arm that then Geralt and Triss were able
Yeah.
to determine that like somebody was making these creatures and it's like from the same source. But again, we didn't really need like Eskel to be the one to do
Yep.
that. Do you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like again, any other Witcher would have been like a great sacrifice in his place to advance the storyline, and we would have just been like, okay, bye.
Yep.
And
So
this
it
is
was
a
a really
minor
bummer for me. Yeah.
No, go ahead, Mike.
minor tangent, and then I want to hear more about John being angry about this because that just gives me big kicks. I love it. It's my favorite thing. So far, from season 1 and it's season 2 up to this point, all you have shown me about Witchers is that they suck at being Witchers. Like,
Mm,
these are supposed to be, from my understanding, literally bred and made to fight off these monsters successfully to a greater degree than anyone else. We saw a Witcher get lost to the Stiga in the first
mm,
season, right? We heard about other Witchers being killed. Now we've seen Eskel, who was supposed to be a great one, killed, in a sense. And they
Mhm.
talk about, Vesemir makes a line like, fire to the heart, and it took you 60 minutes to come to that conclusion. Like, why do these guys come off as amateurs? Why do they
yeah.
keep
Yeah.
doing that? I
Yeah.
asked my brother-in-law, I was like, so this must mean that Geralt is like the greatest of the Witchers ever, right? He's like,
Right.
no, not really.
Yeah. No.
Like,
Yeah, even I adore like the character of Lambert, and I loved his like hilarious story about like, oh, I was supposed to like go fight off a monster, and instead it was like the stable hand sneaking in to have some time with the wife, and I was just like, that is a hilarious story, but like when I think about the stories that Geralt could tell of his year, like none of them were just so mundane like that. You know what I mean? Like Geralt like traveled with, a party to hunt dragons, saw a golden dragon, like, there was just so many like different like crazy things that happened to him, and like I don't know if this is just like a warm up and you've got better stories, but it doesn't seem like anybody else is doing these epic things.
right.
And I kind of wanted to like hear more about that because I mean as much fun as I think it is that Geralt like is truly something special, I do want his like Witcher brothers to be a little bit more.
It's 100%, 150%. It's one of the biggest issues with the show. In the Witcher 2 game, there's a Witcher named Letho, and he is an equal to Geralt for sure. Like
Mhm.
they're going at it. And the difference with Geralt is that the rumor is that Witchers, they pull out of them all ability to have emotion. So they're always
Mhm.
thinking, people meet him in the world and they think they're these cold-hearted, can feel nothing things. And they are just out there for money, and they take any job and kill monsters and clean up your business and whatever. And that's a lot of Witchers, and they're really good at it. The difference with Geralt is he can't help himself but get involved with the political affairs of the nation. He's
Okay.
always getting mixed up with sorceresses who are like historically very dishonest and have their own like agendas, and then
Mhm.
he's dealing with kings and queens and whatever, and Vesemir and others are like, just stay out of it, stay
Mhm.
out of it. Like we protect people from monsters, we take bounties on monsters and evil things.
Mhm.
Don't get involved in like you know these human affairs. And he can't help it. That's the difference. It's not that Geralt's the ultimate super Witcher. And so Geralt does some pretty cool things, but could be cooler.
Mhm.
I still
Yeah.
think. And yeah, we need to see these other people be awesome, and we're
Right.
not. We're really
Yeah.
not. And so Eskel would have been a great opportunity to have someone that they could have done something together and seen. It's like, again, okay, some of these other Witchers, maybe they're newer, they're younger, they're not as good or whatever.
Mhm.
But some of these core Witchers, um, no, they need to step it up. So
Well, Lambert is supposed to be one of the last ones that was made, right? Most
yeah,
recently.
he's younger, I
So
think. Yep.
yeah, before they lost the ability to create more, he was one of the
Yeah,
last
the
ones.
attack there and stuff.
Yeah. So to your point,
Mhm.
yeah, maybe that's why he's dealing with farmhands or whatever that are sneaking in. But also, we're talking about centuries, right? These
Yeah,
guys
they
live
live a
for
long time.
centuries,
Mhm.
and so even the youngest one should be very well versed at this point.
Right. Right. Like we should have some really cool story. Again, we don't need to be like hunting golden dragons and like, having those kinds of like crazy encounters, or at least that's the way, first season made it seem that this was just like so unbelievable.
Mhm.
But we should be having something cool. Like
I mean,
that was the only story we heard from the Witchers, you know what I mean? Except for Eskel's like very anticlimactic battle with Aleshi where Vesemir was like, boy, like,
Yeah.
this is like back to basics and you definitely, screwed it up.
Well,
So,
one guy did get a chunk of his ass taken out by a werewolf. Sorry, that's
but
a
right,
quote.
but we brush right
Nothing.
past that. Like,
Yeah.
that story.
Yeah.
Somebody tell me about a werewolf ass biting. Like,
well, even Geralt, I think, is underutilized. They do cool sword fights with him, but that's not always the best thing for monsters. And it's like
Mhm.
they're underutilized. They're not showing a lot of his abilities in the game.
Yep.
I remember in the second game, you need to use them a lot. You can, one of his curses he throws at someone makes it so it attacks their teammates. So you could be fighting Nilfgaardian people, throw a curse at them, and they fight each other to the
Mhm.
death, or
That'd be
a
cool.
thing where you do it and it locks them in place. The creature can move into the thing and then they're stuck in a spot. They kind of freeze. Like there's different powers that are involved here they could
Mhm.
use. Let me see them coat their blades with oil. They're doing that all the time. You know, crossbow. Use your
Yeah.
cross. Like no one has a bow in this thing. Where are your bows? Like I just the someone's not using their imagination here.
Yeah.
That's
I
where I
I
can,
agree. Yeah,
so
I mean, we get like the very brief, like, Geralt sets his sword on fire to deal with the Leshy, or
Mhm.
like,
mhm.
That
makes
was
it
cool.
molten hot.
Yep.
Great, awesome. I'd love to see more of something like that. Or, very early on in the first episode of the second season, I forgetting the creature's name, um, that the woman that's living with his cursed friend
Oh yeah,
who
the
attacks all the
Broxy or whatever. Yeah, the
yeah,
Broxia.
thank you. Yeah, yep. So he does like hit her with some magic to like, get her off of him and get her away from Ciri. And like there's very, very brief flashes of other things that Geralt can do, but we don't really get into them. They're not like a regular part of his, fighting repertoire. It really is, like you said, just the sword.
Mhm.
So it'd be cool to like explore more of that.
And
I
where are
I
the
will.
other Witchers doing this stuff?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Who else has got something else unique or
Mhm.
different that they've got going on for their fighting style.
Season 2 does show him using a few more of his powers. Like if you look back into season
Yes.
1, right? Season 1 is
Yep.
basically all force push, and
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
what I'm gonna call it because that's what it is to me.
Yep.
Just
Sure.
every single thing. Ard, thank you. Right away, then this time in season 1, right? We see him calming the horse. Is that the Axie? Is that Axie? We
Yeah,
see
I
him
think so.
calming the horse right away.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, we see him light up his sword. And then there's a few other ones that come throughout
The
as well.
fire, like you say, yep, is
Yep.
yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, so I was happy to see that a little bit. And I was thinking
Yes.
maybe that's coming with budget, right? Maybe that's
Yep.
why
Sure.
we're
Right.
able
Sure.
to do it.
Yep.
But yeah, I would like to hear about the other witches for sure.
Yep.
Mhm.
So we might as well get into episode 3 and 4 then.
Mhm.
3, what's happening in 3, Andrea?
Yeah, so this is, kind of series big training moment. Not only is she like going at it hard, she's like practicing her sword skills against a straw man, but then, the other witchers are kind of giving her a hard time and being like, well, if you really want to train and you really want to be, one of us, you're going to run this sort of like gauntlet that we have built. And Siri just
Mhm.
kind of she on the one hand gets her ass kicked like up and down this training field, and on the other like starts to win the witchers over because she's clearly so determined and she's not giving up and she's not going home or running to Geralt crying or whatever. She's just like picking herself up and being like, I'm gonna do it again. um
Yep.
so yeah, so there's definitely some fun moments for her interacting with the other witchers and us seeing them be like, yeah, you're an asshole, but all right, like, you can't help yourself, you are a little bit rooting for her, which is great. And
Yep.
then obviously, of course, uh, Triss is here at Kaer Morhen, um, for multiple reasons, as Geralt says, like, to figure out what's going on with Ciri, help train her, kind of help him figure out what's going on with these monsters that are coming as well.
Yep. Yeah, we should talk about Siri a little bit. I think that, in my opinion, they did a great job with the cast on this, and I think she's putting in a good performance. I'm buying what's happening here with
Mhm.
her. What do you think, Mike? What do you think of Siri?
I like her. Like I like the actress a lot and her
Mhm.
portrayal of it. I like that she, Lambert and the rest of the Witchers kept making references to the fact that she's a princess, and
Mhm.
um, she's always had this underlying thing of hiding the fact that she is a princess in some degree, like with knuckle bones and whatnot. And this is just a really cool way for her to show that she is not merely a princess. Um, and that I kind of wonder a little bit where that determination comes from. This is
Sure.
the first time we're really seeing it, which is fine. You got to see it for the first time somewhere. But certainly in the way that she was raised, that level of determination would never have had to manifest itself by any
Mhm.
means. And I mean,
Mhm.
she took, like you said, she took a huge amount of beatings. She was
Mhm.
coughing up blood right by the end of it.
Yep.
I mean,
Mhm.
that is that is a special kind of determination that has to come through. But I still think
Mhm.
it was cool.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think it's probably leading into Siri really trying to find her place and how she belongs, and if she feels like she can belong here, she's determined to make that so, because she's looking up to Geralt and no one else is accepting her. Maybe this
Mhm.
is a like you say, it's a two-part way to try to gain the respect of the place that she's in now. And it's kind of like you said, your goals on something of like, she's never exactly satisfied with, well, I'm the princess and I'm gonna marry someone and then like that's not so. It's something more to shoot for, or something very different in this case.
Mhm.
um
That's a good
that
point.
I can see her
She did
pushing.
say in season 1 too that um, she wanted to know about the Nilfgaardians coming towards Sintra, and they were trying to
Mhm.
hide it from her. Basically,
Yep.
her grandmother was, and then she's like, Siri said by the time you were my age, you had already won your first battle. So there might
Right.
be she wants to live up to her grandmother a little bit.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, she does repeatedly reference like her grandmother in different moments.
That's true. Yeah.
My grandmother, was a fierce warrior. Like later on in the season, she's like, my grandmother wore dresses and she fought battles. Like,
Mhm.
she clearly holds her in like very high esteem and is
Great
in
point.
some way, I think, consciously or unconsciously trying to live up to her legend.
Yep. Yep. Totally makes sense. Um. All right, and so obviously anything else from episode 3, but then episode 4, we're getting into some more of the politics. We're seeing things going around. Andrew, you'd mentioned in here in your comments about Stregobor being like very
Oh my God.
jump to things,
He is the worst in this episode. Like he just like takes such large leaps and people follow him and I'm just like this is like the least convincing thing I've ever heard. So
See, but the
he
people are going along with it, it seems. And so that was
I
my
that's
frustration is you need
that's
someone else to be able to counter to this guy, someone that can stand up and speak because, to say, like,
right.
put your foot down, say something, like,
She only tries to a point and then
yeah.
she just like lets it happen and I'm super frustrated about it. Because yeah, he just like gets these like really big opportunities to speak to a bunch of people and just say some like very, gaslighting, fear-mongering
Yeah.
crap that doesn't even like logically follow itself. It's just like big, huge, like, what if this happens? Could this be? Like, you know what I mean? And there's no like, okay, I'm logically gonna like lay it out. Point A, point B, point C, point D. It's literally just like, did you see this one thing this one time?
The shock
Obviously it will
value.
yeah, it's just there's just such large like logical leaps that you have to make to follow his arguments and to just like buy into them that they just don't feel real, but somehow everybody's like, "Oh yeah, like great point." You know? He's like, "Let me conjure this like fire person
Yeah.
and be like,
It's
"Ooh,
a presentation.
fire."
Yeah. It's a
Yeah,
show.
it is all show and it's just so hollow and empty that as an audience member I was like, I mean, I get why this is happening and I get where they're going with this character and he's going to obviously create problems for Yennefer because he's never liked her, but it just seems like such a big leap that the entire rest of the brotherhood is like totally yeah. So,
Well, yeah. Even Istred or whatever his name is, the mage, like he attempted
yeah.
to come in and correct some things, but then gave up right away.
Yeah, it was just so
It's
weak. It
like,
was just sort of
yeah.
like, "Oh, like it wouldn't happen." And then he's like, "But what if it did?" And he's like,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
like you are completely cowed by an argument of like, what if it did? Like,
Yeah.
it just, I don't know. So Stregobor was just like really getting on my nerves in this episode because it was like first he, like was creating this like elves are dangerous and terrible and everybody knows it. And it's like,
hmm
okay, I guess. And then he was like, and what if Yennefer came back from the dead because she's, evil and scary? And everybody's like, ooh. And then again, he's like, I created this fire thing. What if she's like this fire thing that happened a long time ago? Ooh. Like, it was just so much like fear mongering without any basis in fact that, yeah,
Yep.
I was quite tired of it by episode's end.
That's pretty consistent with his character, actually, though, because
Yeah.
his whole idea with destroying Renfrey,
Yeah.
right off
Yeah.
the bat, was based
Yeah.
off of this silly hunch, and he's kind of painted to be this guy who claims that he's doing autopsies, but he's just confirmation biasing himself,
Right.
basically.
So like who let him have any
Yeah.
say ever? Like whoever was like, this guy knows what he's talking about, he should be on the brook. Like where did he get that in the first place? Because he clearly sucks.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. Well, we should talk about episode 4. It's
Indeed.
the last one here. So we are introduced to Dijkstra, which is an awesome character and a great cast. I thought I'm excited to see where they go with Dijkstra. He's in the Uncharted games, just a voice, but that's where I
You
know
know what
him
else
from.
he's in?
What else is he in?
It's something we love and we've talked about on the show a lot. It's animated, but it's not anime, as you very rightly pointed out to me.
Oh,
Also on
Castlevania, probably,
Netflix.
right?
Yes. He's
Okay,
Dracula.
yeah,
He's
okay,
an Outlander too. This guy is getting
He is.
around.
He
nice.
is. Yep. I remember him from there too. Yeah. His like facial hair is just I think like his whole image. It's
Mhm.
beautiful and
Yeah,
wonderful and so iconic.
it's good. It's good. So as soon as I saw him, I always love seeing something I'm familiar with because the world's big. There's a lot that I don't know for sure. Um, this episode, we're seeing him get involved. We see he's behind some talking to some different rulers and stuff like that. We get some
Also making
more.
a play for Sintra,
Yep.
which, I'm assuming is going to be a thing later in the season or other seasons.
Right. Yep. Andrea, you mentioned no mention of Yennefer. Come on,
Yes.
Chris. This is
Yeah.
consistent. This is a good
So,
point. Yep.
clearly there's like a love triangle here or an attempted one.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, not cool, man. Like I really like Triss. And you know what? If Yennefer was gone, like, go for it. I mean, if she's actually like dead and gone, like, there's nothing from stopping you from taking your shot. He could
Mhm.
still reject you. Or if you do tell him that she's alive, which she doesn't, but if you do and he has, no reaction or like not the reaction you expect, or like he's like, I've let her go or whatever, again, shoot your shot, girl. But you can't keep something like she's alive and in the world from him and shoot your shot. I'm not okay with that. That's breaking some major girl code.
And then we have the whole like, okay, Ciri has elder blood. We'd mentioned that before.
Yes.
So we've got people after her. We've got the flame guy. He's the one trick pony. I've got a flame
Mhm.
finger, acting and stuff. And so this is, I'm trying to read your notes so I don't go past where Ciri is where towards the end of this episode.
So they've just defeated the creepy centipede thing, that comes after her after killing the Leshy, and then weirdly like pauses before like, he's got her cornered, and there's this
Right?
whole like
Yep.
big moment, and I didn't know if that was like significant or not because then later on we find out that the centipede has the same compound in it that the Leshy had, and it's tied to this monolith that Ciri claims she might have accidentally toppled. And I'm not sure if this is like a dream thing or if it happened when she like had that scream on the plains where like everything around her like toppled over and possibly died. So
Okay.
yeah, there's sort of a little bit of confusion there for me,
Sure.
what exactly that's about.
Okay. Okay.
Oh,
So
Alan's telling me this centipede monster is a myriapod, which is a sweet name.
It is cool.
I like that, and totally conveys what it is.
nice.
Myriapod. I dig it.
Well, I'm asking because some of your notes seem to suggest stuff that's a little later than that.
Well, yeah, so
And
the compound that they find is kind of right before then they also find out that Ciri has elder blood. And that's sort of where that storyline for me, has stopped at episode 4. And then of course, right after that we switch back to Yennefer and the Knight of Nilfgaard, Cahir, who are trying to escape and get to Sintra. And possibly like for Cahir, he's gonna like maybe put Fringilla back in her place because she's kind of, you know, grown a little big for her britches and is sort of like taking over, and he's sort of like weirded out that she's calling all the shots right now for Nilfgaard.
okay.
Um, but yeah, kind of unclear about that.
Yeah. It's interesting how that's gonna there's some cool stuff coming up with that. I don't wanna verge into stepping into the next episode Because there are definitely some neat things that happen with that yet, and it's hard for me to bite my tongue, I guess. So,
Yeah.
but
I'm sorry,
so
I'm holding you guys
no,
back.
it's all right. Based on first half of season 2, we'll go to Andrea because that's you've seen. What do you
Mhm.
think? I mean, is it living up to your expectation?
Yeah, so I think that certain elements are, like you've said, I think some of the technical aspects have improved on the show. A lot of the effects have, everything feels still within like a grounded real world. Characters are for the most part very compelling. Mike, I do agree with you that like Yennefer's losing a lot of direction for me, and I'm very frustrated with her. Um, so I'm a little disappointed that perhaps that doesn't get corrected in the second half of the season. Um, but overall, I'm still very much like on the edge of my seat, wondering what's happening next with like the overarching storylines. I'm excited to get to the second half of the season. Um, so I would say I would give it overall a thumbs up. I'm happy with the season. Not quite as happy as season 1 though.
Okay. All right. Well, I think we'll leave it there then.